Hello, hello, hello. Okay, today, Looking Glass, chapters 7 and 8. And last time it was so good. I can't wait to see what happens next. Okay, so here's chapter 7. Okay, the lion and the unicorn. The next moment, foot soldiers came running through the woods, at first in 2s and 3s, and then 10 or 20 at a time. Then they seemed to fill the whole forest. Alice got behind a tree and watched them go by. She had never seen soldiers so clumsy on their feet. They were always tripping over something, and whenever one went down, several more always fell over him, so that the ground was soon covered with little heaps of men. Then came the horses. Having 4 feet, these managed better than the soldiers, but even they stumbled now and then, and the riders fell off. The confusion got worse every moment. Alice was very glad to get out of the woods into an open place where she found the White King seated on the ground, busily writing in his notebook. "I've sent them all," the king cried in delight on seeing Alice. "Did you happen to meet any soldiers, my dear, as you came through the woods?" "Yes, I did," said Alice. "Several thousand, I think." 4,207, that's the exact number, the king said, glancing at his notebook. "I couldn't send all the horses, you know, because 2 of them are needed in the chess game. And I didn't send the 2 messengers either. They've both gone to the town. Just look along the road and tell me if you can see either of them." "I see nobody on the road," said Alice. "I only wish I had such eyes," the king remarked, "to be able to see nobody. And at that distance, too, why, it's as much as I can do to see real people by this light." "I see somebody now," Alice exclaimed. "But he's coming very slowly and moving around quite curiously." The messenger, who looked like a hare, kept skipping up and down, wriggling like an eel as he came along, with his great hands spread out like fans on each side. "Not at all," said the king. "He only does that when he's happy. His name is Haga. He pronounced it like hare, so his name is Hare. The other messenger is called Hata. I must have 2, you know, to come and go. One to come, one to go." "I beg your pardon," said Alice. "It isn't respectable to beg," said the king. "I only meant that I didn't understand," said Alice. "Why one to come and one to go?" "Didn't I tell you? I must have 2 to fetch and carry, one to fetch and one to carry." At this moment the messenger arrived. He was too out of breath to say a word, and could only wave his hands around and make the most fearful faces at the poor king. "This young lady is Alice," the king said, "and your silly looks are making me nervous. I feel faint. Give me a ham sandwich." The messenger opened a bag that hung around his neck and handed a sandwich to the king, who ate it up quickly. "Another sandwich," said the king. "There's nothing but hay left now," the messenger said, peeping into the bag. "Hey then," excuse me. "Hey then," the king said in a faint whisper. Alice was glad to see that. Pepped him up a great deal. "There's nothing like eating hay when you're faint," he said to her as he munched away. "I would think throwing cold water over you would be better," Alice suggested. "I didn't say there was nothing better," the king replied. "I said there was nothing like it." The king turned to the messenger and asked, "Whom did you pass on the road?" "Nobody," said the messenger. "Quite right," said the king. "This young lady saw him too, so of course nobody walks slower than you." "I do my best," said the messenger. "I'm sure nobody walks much faster than I do." "He can't do that," said the king, "or else he'd have been here first. However, now you've got your breath, you may tell us what's happened in the town." "I'll whisper it," said the messenger, putting his hands to his mouth in the shape of a trumpet, and stooping so as to get close to the king's ear. Alice was sorry for this, for she wanted to hear the news too. However, instead of whispering, the messenger simply shouted at the top of his voice, "They're at it again!" "Huh, do you call it that? A whisper?" cried the poor king, jumping up and shaking himself. "If you do such a thing, I'll have you buttered. Who are at it again? Asked Alice. Why, the lion and unicorn, of course, said the king. Fighting for the crown? Yes, said the king, and the best of the joke is that it's my crown. Let's run and see them. And they trotted off, Alice repeating to herself as she ran, the words of the old song. The lion and the unicorn were fighting for the crown. The lion beat the unicorn all around the town. Some gave them white bread, some gave them brown, some gave them plum cake and drummed them out of town. Does the one that wins get the crown? She asked, quite out of breath. Dear me, no, said the king. What an idea. Would you be good enough, Alice panted, to stop for a minute so I can catch my breath? I'm good enough, the king said, only I'm not strong enough to stop a minute. You see, a minute goes by so very quick, you might as well try to stop a bandersnatch. Alice had no more breath for talking, so they trotted on in silence until they came in sight of a great crowd. In the middle of the crowd, the lion and unicorn were fighting. They went over to Haya, the other messenger, who was standing watching the fight with a cup of tea in one hand and a piece of bread and butter in the other. He's just out of prison, Haya whispered to Alice, and he hadn't finished his tea when he was sent in. How are they getting on with the fight? Asked the king. Haya swallowed quickly and nearly choked on his bread. They're getting on very well. Each of them has been down about 87 times. Then I suppose they'll bring the white bread and the brown again soon, Alice remarked. It's waiting for them now, said Ada. This is a bit of that I'm eating. There was a pause in the fight just then, and the lion and the unicorn sat down, panting, while the king called out, 10 minutes allowed for refreshments. Haya and Hada went to work at once, carrying trays of white and brown bread. Alice took a piece to taste, but it was very dry. I don't think they'll fight any more today, said the king to Hada. Go and order the drums to begin. And Hada went bounding away like a grasshopper. Just then, the unicorn walked by them with his hands in his pockets. I had the best of this time, didn't I? He asked the king, just glancing at him as he passed. A little, the king replied nervously. You shouldn't have run him through with your horn, you know. It didn't hurt him, the unicorn said, and as he spoke, his eye fell on Alice. He turned around instantly and stood for some time staring. What is that? This is a child. Haya replied eagerly, stepping forward. We only found it today. I always thought they were fabulous monsters, said the unicorn. Is it alive? The unicorn looked dreamily at Alice and said, Talk, child. Alice could not help her lips curling up into a smile as she began. Do you know, I've always thought unicorns were fabulous monsters too. I never saw one alive before. Well, now that we have seen each other, said the unicorn, if you believe in me, I'll believe in you. Is that a bargain? Yes, said Alice. Come fetch out some plum cake, old man, the unicorn said to the king. None of your brown bread for me. Certainly, the king muttered and waved Haya over. Open the bag, he whispered. Quick, not that one. That's full of hay. Haya took a large cake out of the bag and gave it to Alice to hold while he got out a dish and carving knife. How they all came out of the bag, Alice couldn't guess. It was like a magic trick. The lion had joined them while this was going on. He looked very tired and sleepy, and his eyes were half shut. What's this? He said, blinking lazily at Alice. Oh, you'll never guess, the unicorn cried eagerly. I couldn't. The lion looked at Alice wearily. Are you an animal, vegetable, or mineral? He said, yawning at every other word. It's a fabulous monster, the unicorn cried out before Alice could reply. Then hand out the plum cake, monster, the lion said, lying down and putting his chin on his paws. And sit down, both of you, to the king and to the unicorn. Divide the cake Fairly now. The king was evidently very uncomfortable having to sit between the two great creatures, but there was no other place for him to sit. What a fight we might have for the crown now, the unicorn said, looking at the king's crown. The poor king was nearly shaking it off his head. He trembled so much. I should easily win, said the lion. I'm not so sure of that, said the unicorn. Why, I beat you all around the town, you chicken, the lion replied angrily, starting to get up as he spoke. Here the king interrupted to prevent the quarrel going on. He was very nervous and his voice quivered. All around the town, he said. That's a good long way. Did you go by the old bridge in the marketplace? You get the best view by the old bridge. I don't know, the lion growled as he lay down again. There was too much dust to say anything. What a long time the monster's taking cutting the cake. Alice had seated herself on the bank of a little brook with a dish on her knees and was cutting the plum cake with the knife. It's very frustrating, she said in reply to the lion. I've cut several slices already, but they join right back to the cake. It doesn't look sliced at all. You don't know how to manage looking glass cakes, the unicorn remarked. Hand it around first and cut it after. Well, this sounded like nonsense, but Alice carried the dish around and the cake divided itself into 3 pieces as she did so. Now, cut it up, said the lion. I say, this isn't fair, cried the unicorn as Alice sat quite puzzled with the knife in her hand. The monster's given the lion twice as much as me. She's cutting none for herself anyhow, said the lion. Do you like plum cake, monster? But before Alice could answer him, the drums began. She couldn't tell where the noise came from, but the air seemed full of it. It rang through and through her head until she felt quite deafened. She got to her feet and sprang across the little brook in terror. And had just enough time to see the lion and the unicorn rise to their feet with angry looks at being interrupted in their feast before she dropped to her knees and put her hands over her ears, trying to shut off the dreadful uproar. If that doesn't drum them out of town, she thought to herself, nothing ever will. Okay, end of chapter 7. A lot of characters in that one. I love it. Okay, chapter 8. It's my own invention. After a while, the noise seemed to fade away, and Alice lifted up her head. There was no one to be seen. At first, she thought she must have been dreaming about the lion and the unicorn and these odd messengers, but there was the plum cake dish still lying at her feet. So I wasn't dreaming at all, she said to herself. A loud shouting of ahoy, ahoy, check, interrupted her thoughts, and a knight dressed in red armor came galloping up to her. Just as she reached her, the horse stopped suddenly. You're my prisoner, the knight cried as he tumbled off his horse. Startled as she was, Alice was more frightened for him than for herself at the moment. She watched him as he jumped back onto his horse. As soon as he was comfortably in the saddle, he began once more. You're my, but here another voice broke in. Ahoy, ahoy, chuck, and Alice looked around in some surprise for the new enemy. This time, it was a white knight. He came to Alice's side and tumbled off his horse just as the red knight had done. Then he got on again, and the two knights sat and looked at each other for some time without speaking. Alice looked from one to the other with some bewilderment. She's my prisoner, you know, the red knight said at last. Yes, but then I came and rescued her, the white knight replied. Well, we must fight for her then, said the red knight as he took up his helmet and put it on. You will follow the rules of battle, of course, the white knight said, putting on his helmet too. I always do, said the red knight. They began banging away at each other with such fury that Alice got behind a tree to be out of the way of the blows. I wonder what the rules of battle are, Alice said to herself as she watched the fight peeping out from her hiding place. One rule seems to be that if one knight hits the other, he knocks him off his horse, and if he misses, he tumbles off himself. Another rule seems to be that they hold their clubs with their arms as if they were Punch and Judy puppets. What noise when they tumble? I'll show you again. Another rule of battle that Alice had not noticed seemed to be that they always fell on their heads. The battle ended with both falling off in this way, side by side. When they got up again, they shook hands, and then the Red Knight mounted and galloped off. "It was a glorious victory, wasn't it?" said the White Knight as he came up panting. "I don't know," Alice said. I don't want to be anyone's prisoner. I want to be a queen." "So you will, when you've crossed the next brook," said the White Knight. "I'll see you safe to the end of the woods, and then I must go back, you know. That's the end of my move." "Thank you very much," said Alice. "May I help you off with your helmet?" It was more than he could handle, but she shook him out of it at last. "Now I can breathe more easily," said the knight, pulling back his shaggy hair. He turned his gentle face and large, mild eyes to Alice. She had never seen such a strange-looking soldier in all her life. He was dressed in tin armor, which fitted him very badly, and he had an odd-shaped little pine box fastened across his shoulders, upside down, and with the lid hanging open. Alice looked at it with great curiosity. "But I see you're admiring my little box," the knight said in a friendly tone. "It's my own invention, to keep cloves and sandwiches in it. You see, I carry it upside down so the rain can't get in it." "But the things can't get out?" Alice said gently. "Do you know the lid's open?" "I didn't know," the knight said. "Then all the things must have fallen out, and the box is no use without them." He unfastened it as he spoke and was just going to throw it into the bushes when a thought seemed to strike him as he hung it carefully on a tree. "Can you guess why I did that?" he said to Alice. Alice shook her head. "In hopes some bees may make a nest in it. Then I could get the honey." "But you've got a beehive fastened to your saddle?" said Alice. "Yes, it's a very good beehive," the knight said. "One of the best kind. But not a single bee has come near it. And the other thing is a mousetrap. I suppose the mice keep the bees out, or the bees keep the mice out. I don't know which." "I was wondering what the mousetrap was for," said Alice. It isn't very likely there would be any mice on the horse's back." "Not very likely, perhaps," said the knight. "But if they do come, I don't choose to have them running all about. You see," he went on after a pause, "it's good to be prepared for everything. That's the reason the horse has all those anklets around its feet." "But what are they for?" Alice asked in a tone of great curiosity. "To guard against the bites of sharks," the knight replied. "It's an invention of my own. Now help me on. I'll go with you to the end of the woods, but what's that dish for?" "It's for plum cake," said Alice. "We'd better take it with us," the knight said. "It'll come in handy if we find any plum cake. Help me to get it into this bag." This took a very long time to manage, though Alice held the bag open very carefully. The knight was so very awkward in putting in the dish. The first 2 or 3 times that he tried, he fell in himself. "It's rather a tight fit, you see," he said, as they got in at the last. "There are so many candlesticks in the bag." And he hung it to the saddle, which was already loaded with bunches of carrots and fire irons and many other things. "I hope you've got your hair well fastened on," he continued as they set off. "Mm, Only in the usual way," Alice said, smiling. "That's hardly enough," he said anxiously. "You see, the wind is so very strong here. It's as strong as soup." Alice puzzled over this and walked on in silence. Every now and then she would stop to help the poor knight, who was not a good rider. Whenever the horse stopped, which it did often, he fell off in front, and when it went on again, he fell off the back. And every now and then, he would fall off sideways. "You've not had much practice in riding, I'm afraid," Alice said, as she was helping him up from his 5th tumble. "What makes you say that?" he asked as he scrambled back into the saddle, holding on to Alice's hair with one hand to save himself from falling over on the other side. "Because people don't fall off quite so often when they've had much practice." "I've had plenty of practice," the knight said gravely. "Plenty of practice," he kept repeating all the time. Alice was getting him on his feet again. "It's ridiculous," cried Alice, losing all her patience as he tumbled once again. "You ought to have a wooden horse on wheels." "Does that kind go smoothly?" asked the knight with great interest. He clasped his arms around the horse's neck as he spoke, just in time to save himself from tumbling off again. "Much more smoothly than a live horse," Alice said, with a little scream of laughter. "I'll get one," the knight said thoughtfully to himself. "1 or 2, several." "What a curious helmet you've got," Alice remarked. "Is that your own invention, too?" The knight looked down proudly at his helmet, which hung from the saddle. Yes, he said, but I've invented a better one than that. It was quite large, so when I fell off the horse, it touched the ground first, and I had very little way to fall, you see. But there was always a danger of falling into it. That happened to me once, and before I could get out again, the other white knight came and put it on. He thought it was his own helmet. Did it? Did you hurt him? Alice asked, trying not to giggle, being on top of his head. I had to kick him, of course, the knight said very seriously, and then he took the helmet off again, but it took hours and hours to get me out. He raised his hand in some excitement as he said this, and instantly rode out of the saddle and fell headlong into a deep ditch. Alice ran to the side of the ditch to look for him. She was startled by the fall and was afraid that he really was hurt this time, but was relieved to hear that he was talking on in his usual tone. How can you go on talking with your head downward? Alice asked as she dragged him out by the feet and laid him in a heap on the bank. The knight looked surprised at the question. What does it matter where my body happens to be? He said. My mind goes on working all the same. They walked on until they had come to the end of the woods. The white knight announced, and here I must leave you. You've only a few yards to go down the hill and over that little brook, and then you'll be a queen. But you'll stay and see me off first? He added as Alice turned to look eagerly for the brook. I shan't be long. You'll wait and wave your handkerchief when I get to that turn in the road. It will encourage me, you see. Of course I'll wait, said Alice, and thank you very much for coming so far. So they shook hands, and then the knight rode slowly away into the forest. It won't take long to see him off, I expect, Alice said to herself as she stood watching him. There he goes, right on his head, as usual. She watched as the knight tumbled off first on one side, then on the other, in the fourth or fifth tumble as he reached the turn. Then she waved her handkerchief to him and waited until he was out of sight. I hope it encouraged him, she said as she turned to run down the hill. And now for the last brook. And to be a queen! How grand it sounds. A few steps brought her to the edge of the brook. The 8th square at last, she cried as she ran across and threw herself down on a flowered lawn. Oh, how glad I am to get here, and what is this on my head? She exclaimed as she put her hands up to something very heavy that fitted tight all around her head. But how can it have got there without my knowing it? She said to herself as she lifted it off and set it on her lap to figure out what it was. It was a golden crown. All right. And that is the end of chapter 8. Okay, stay tuned for next time.